Okay, welcome to the top 10 at 10. Today is May the 16th, 2014. I'm your host, Dan Wright, writer at FarDogLake.com, and these are the top 10. Oh, no, it's working. Every day's an adventure. Story number 10, that's from Reuters. Amid protests, U.S. FCC proposes new net neutrality rules. U.S. regulators on Thursday advanced a, quote, net neutrality proposal that would ban internet providers from blocking or slowing down access to websites, but may let them charge content companies for faster and more reliable delivery of their traffic to users. For 4 months now, the public can weigh in on the rules proposed by the FCC in what promises to be an intense tug of war between some tech companies and consumer advocates on one side and the Republicans and broadband providers on the other over the extent to which the agency can regulate internet traffic. Dozens protested the vote of the FCC on Thursday, as many consumer advocates have rejected FCC Chairman Tom Wheeler's proposal that may allow some, quote, commercially reasonable, unquote, deals in which content companies could pay broadband providers to prioritize traffic on their networks. Critics worry the rules would create, quote, fast lanes for companies that pay up and mean slower traffic for others. Wheeler pledged to use all his powers to prevent acts to, quote, acts to divide the internet between haves and have-nots. Oh, kiss of death. Kiss of death right there. So they're still not doing common carrier, which is what net neutrality actually is. So, I mean, this is sort of Orwellian doublespeak you're hearing. Oh, we're not going to allow fast lanes. We're not. These are our new rules, but we're going to allow compensation for special privileges, which are fast lanes. I mean, that's what they control. So, needless to say, the FCC has botched it yet again. This is what happens when you let former industry lobbyists or former industry activists and apparatchiks become commissioners, which Tom Wheeler is. So it could be the beginning of the end for a free and open internet. That's going to make things a lot better. Story number 9. This little report on the assets of politicians, which I always think are interesting to look at, from the New York Times. The assets of President Obama and his wife Michelle were valued as high as $7 million last year, according to financial disclosure form. Most of the president's income came from royalties on his 3 books and investments made possible by the proceeds. His memoir, Dreams from My Father, published in 1995, continued to make the most money, generating between $50,000 and $100,000 in royalties, according to the disclosure form. The Audacity of Hope from 2006 earned between $15,000 and $50,000, and A V.I. Sing, A Letter to My Daughters, released in 2010, I didn't even know about that one, earned between $5,000 to $15,000. Sales from Mr. Obama's books have decreased steadily every year since he took office as president, according to disclosure forms the White House has released. Treasury notes held jointly by the president and Mrs. Obama are their most valuable assets, worth between $1 million and $5 million. The forms only require the Obamas to list their assets and income in wide ranges, leaving it difficult to discern the exact amount of the couple's worth in 2013. Vice President Joe Biden's publishing career earned him considerably less than the president's. Promises to Keep, released in 2007, earned less than $201. Oh, Joe. The Obama's 2013 tax returns, released in April, showed they paid $98,169 in federal taxes on $481,000 in adjusted gross income. The Bidens paid $96,000 on taxes of adjusted gross income of $407,000. The Obama administration was the first to publish financial disclosure reports online. High-ranking government officials have been required to release their financial information since passage of the Ethics in Government Act of 1978. Neither the president nor the vice president have any conflicts of interest, and the reports have been reviewed and certified by the Independent Office of Government Ethics. Okay. So, millionaires, mostly from book proceeds that were, of course, wildly enhanced by running for president and winning the presidency, but that's nothing particularly unseemly there. Just important to keep track. Story number 8. Yep. It's now the Canadian dream. I agree with this. This is it was in 1931 that the historian James Truslow Adams coined the phrase "the American dream." The American dream is not just a yearning for affluence, Adams said, but also for the chance to overcome barriers in social class to become the best that we can be. Adams acknowledged that the United States didn't fully live up to that ideal, but he argued that America came closer than anyone else. Adams was right at the time, and for decades, when my father, an Eastern European refugee, this is from Nick Christie, by the way, at the New York Times, reached France after World War II, he was determined to continue to the United States because it was less class-bound, more meritocratic, and offered more opportunity. Yet today, the American dream is derailed, partly because of growing inequality, or maybe the American dream has just swapped citizenship. For now, it's more likely to be found in Canada or Europe. And the central issue in this year's political campaign should be how to repatriate it. A report last month in the Times by David Leonhardt and Kevin Quealy noted that the American middle class is no longer the richest in the world, with Canada apparently pulling ahead in median after-tax income. Other countries in Europe are poised to overtake us as well. In fact, the discrepancy is arguably even greater. Canadians receive essentially free health care, while Americans pay for part of their health costs with after-tax dollars. Meanwhile, the American worker toils on average 4.6% more hours than a Canadian worker, 21% more hours than a French worker, and an astonishing 28% more hours than a German worker, according to data from the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development. Canadians and Europeans also live longer, on average, than Americans do. Their children are less likely to die than ours. American women are twice as likely to die as a result of pregnancy or childbirth as Canadian women. And while our universities are still the best in the world, children in other industrialized countries, on average, get a better education than ours. Most sobering of all, a recent OECD report found that for people aged 16 to 24, Americans ranked last among rich countries in numeracy and technological proficiency. Economic mobility is tricky to measure, but several studies show that a child born in the bottom 20% economically is less likely to rise to the top in America than in Europe. A Danish child is twice as likely to rise as an American child. Jeez. When our futures are determined to a significant extent at birth, we're reverted to the feudalism that our ancestors fled. Equality of opportunity, the American dream, has always been a cherished American ideal. Joseph Stiglitz, Nobel winning economist at Columbia University, noted in a recent speech, but data now show that this is a myth. America has become the advanced country not only with the highest level of inequality, but one of those with the least equality of opportunity. Consider that the American economy has overall grown more quickly than France's, but so much of the growth has gone to the top 1%. At the bottom 99% of French people have done better than the bottom 99% of Americans. We'll go through a little bit of this. 3 data points. The top 1% in America now own assets worth more than those held by the entire bottom 90%. Jeez. The 6 Walmart heirs are worth as much as the bottom 41%. The top 6 hedge fund managers and traders averaged more than $2 billion each in earnings last year, partly because of the egregious carried interest tax break. President Obama has been unable to get financing for universal pre-kindergarten. This year's proposed federal budget for pre-K for all, so important to our nation's future, would be a bit more than a single month's earnings for those 6 tycoons. Inequality has become a hot topic, propelling Bill de Blasio to become mayor of New York City, turning Elizabeth Warren into a star, and elevating the economist Thomas Piketty into such a demigod that my teenage daughter asked me the other day for a 696-page tome. All this growing awareness is a hopeful sign, because there are policy steps we should take to create opportunity and dampen inequality. We should stop subsidizing private jets and too big to fail banks, and direct those funds to early education programs that help break the cycle of poverty. We can invest less in prisons and more in schools. We can impose a financial transactions tax and use the proceeds to broaden job programs like the Earned Income Tax Credit and career academies And as Alan S. Binder of Princeton University has outlined, we can give companies tax credits for creating new jobs. It's time to bring American dream home from exile. Interesting take. Story number 7. This is from Diane Ravage's blog, which you should be reading anyway. But 6 charter school myths in her testimony to the New York City Council Education Committee. Education activist Leona Hameson of Class Size Matters exploded several common myths. First is a myth that they are public schools. They are not. They are private corporations, not charter schools, exempt from most state laws and most state oversight. Second is the myth that charter schools enroll exactly the same demographic of students as real schools. Read the rest of the post. Okay. Worth doing. Story number 6. Adjusting to the Apocalypse. This is kind of fun, from Jacobin Magazine. Societies are going to adjust to climate change in some way. It's up for us to push that transformation in a progressive direction. The news that a section of the West Antarctica ice sheet is now irreversibly melting into the ocean is awesome and terrifying as a vivid illustration of the scale of climate change. I can't but help think that what I wrote recently about another prediction of ecologically driven disaster, the prediction of civilization collapse, turned out to be based on oh really? Speculation. Well, the findings about it. Oh, okay, he's talking about a recent post he wrote about what civilization collapse. But I once again wonder if the publicity around these findings will wind up doing much good. It certainly would if the combined enormity and easy comprehensibility of this new findings get more people to take climate change seriously. While 100 years is an infinitesimal amount of time in geological terms, it is nevertheless an extremely long time in the context of industrialized human society. It's hard to imagine human society dealing with environmental changes of this magnitude, but perhaps no more so than picturing the regimes of 1914 reckoning with the upheavals of the past century. Societies will adapt, even if those adaptations will entail enormous expenses and dislocations. So, I guess as we do adapt, it's important to prevent, or when due to society restructuring anyway, it's important, I guess, to promote a sort of progressive agenda. These adaptations will impose costs and burdens, and the ruling class will do what it can to impose those burdens on those who can least bear them. In other words, the politics of climate change are and will continue to be intertwined with class struggle across all domains, not just the fight against the fossil fuel industry. I believe, of course, that socialism is also the best answer to the ecological crisis, but I also agree with Christian Parenti that in the short term, realistic climate politics are reformist politics, even if they are conceived of as part of a longer term anti-capitalist project of totally economic reorganization. Meaning Marco Rubio's climate change denialism and Obama's dithering over the Keystone Pipeline are at least as terrifying as the latest word from Antarctica, as is the rise of a climate apartheid that allows the rich to evade the consequences of a warming world. Fortunately, our immediate political obstacles, unlike the movements of the glaciers, are at least potentially susceptible to change through collective action. Not really. Let me throw some cold water on that. Not really. Story number 5 is just Gallup poll. Gallup reports that Democratic Party still seen more favorably than GOP. Americans view the Democratic Party more favorably than the Republican Party, even though both parties have a net unfavorable rating. Democratic Party favorability ratings have held steady since last June, while Republicans' favorables have increased slightly from their all-time low of last year. Still, if the Republicans' current favorability ratings hold, they will be the lowest ever for either party in an election year. You hate the Republican Party, but do you hate your local candidate for Congress? Big and important cue. Story number 4 from Consortium News. Hitler's shadow reaches toward today. The key role of neo-Nazis in Ukraine's U.S.-backed coup is denied by the mainstream U.S. press, which can't believe the U.S. government would collaborate with such unsavory characters. But that isn't the real history. The U.S. government protected Nazi war criminal Klaus Barbie in the years after World War II, and later unleashed the infamous Butcher of Lyon on South America by aiding his escape from French war crimes prosecutors, according to a report issued by the National Archives in 2010. The report, entitled Hitler's Shadow, concentrates on the decisions by the U.S. Army's counterintelligence corps to use Barbie and other ex-Nazis for early Cold War operations. But other work by investigative journalists and government investigators has shown how Barbie's continued allegiance to the Nazi ideology contributed to the spread of right-wing extremism in Latin America. With his skills as an intelligence operative and his expertise in state terror, Barbie helped shape the particularly vicious style of anti-communism that dominated South America for most of the Cold War. He also played a role in building a conduit for drug proceeds to fund right-wing paramilitary operations, including Ronald Reagan's beloved Nicaraguan Contra rebels. In 1980, Barbie used his perch in Bolivian intelligence to organize an alliance of military leaders and cocaine barons to overthrow Bolivia's democratically elected leftist government in a bloody coup. Though fitting with Washington's distrust of left-wing populist movements in South America, the so-called cocaine coup had other long-term consequences. Bolivia's coup regime ensured a reliable flow of coca to Colombia's Medellin cartel, which quickly grew into a sophisticated conglomerate for smuggling cocaine into the United States. Jesus. Some of those drug profits then went to finance right-wing paramilitary operations, including the CIA-backed Contras, according to other U.S. government investigators. Barbie reportedly collaborated, too, with representatives of Rev. Sun Myung Moon's Unification Church as they worked with Bolivia's cocaine coup regime to organize anti-communist operations in South America. By then, the region had become a center for Moon's global money laundering operations. Jeez, this is really... That's an interesting article. I definitely recommend it. There's a lot in here. Some of the stuff's going to have to be checked out, though. There's a lot of allegations in here. But Sword and Muse has a pretty good reputation, so I wonder. Story number 3, the Daily Beast. Are viruses the next cure for cancer? Giant doses of a genetically modified measles vaccine cured 2 of blood cancer at a Mayo Clinic this week. Why the magic remedy must be met with caution. The unlikely strategy of using a live virus to treat cancer took yet another step forward this week, with the news that scientists at the Mayo Clinic had treated 2 adults with the blood cancer, multiple myeloma, by injecting them with megadoses of genetically modified measles viruses. Both patients had failed all other available therapies with the new oncolytic virus. So oncolytic virus. Oncolytic? I don't know. Oncolytic virus treatment. Each responded and one remains in remission 9 months later. In this study, the patients neither with existing antibody to measles virus received enormous doses of live measles viruses infused directly into their vein, not given as a shot like a vaccine. Both became feverish and ill with the infusion, as expected, and both recovered. The measles virus was derived from a strain used in routine measles vaccine, but had been carefully altered by scientists to enhance its tumor-killing effects. It was still, however, a measles virus capable of giving a person measles-like symptoms. The choice of measles for the cancer was quite deliberate. This virus is known to seek out and attack a type of white blood cell that myeloma arises from. The investigators simply harnessed measles virus's natural-born killer tendency. So treating cancer with live viruses. Read the article at Daily Beast. I rarely recommend a Daily Beast article, but this one's very interesting. Story number 2. This is from the Nieman Lab, sort of a non-profit journalist think tank. The new leaked New York Times Innovation Report is one of the key documents of this media age. It's an astonishing look inside the cultural change still needed in the shift to digital, even in one of the world's greatest newsrooms. Read it. So that's there are a few things that can galvanize the news world's attention, like a change in leadership. So this is part of the Joel Abrahamson's drama. So part of this apparently was around this report called Innovation the New York Times came up with, and it basically says their digital strategy sucks. It's not working. And that is some. Okay, so I've spoken with multiple digital savvy time staffers in recent days who described the report with words like transformative and incredibly important and a big moment for the future of the Times. One admitted crying while reading it because it surfaced so many issues about Times culture that digital types have been struggling to overcome for years. So apparently, you go take a look at this report. It's 91 pages. Look at that drop. So 2011, the New York Times had like 160 million homepage visitors. Now it has around 80 million. Eesh, that sucks. You get a lot of interesting stuff about data and other things here. So check it out over at Nieman Journalism Lab. And the number one story, Bridgegate, Christie's former campaign manager said governor lied at presser. They're waiting for this to happen. They're starting to divide finally. And another shoe drops. Now it is Governor Christie's former campaign manager, Bill Stepien, who has claimed that Christie lied to the public at a December press conference when Christie claimed no one on his senior staff knew about the illegal lane closures on the George Washington Bridge. Michael Druniak previously testified that he had talked to the governor about statements made to him by David Wildstein that implicated Bridget Kelly, Deputy Chief of Staff. But a lawyer representing Christie's former campaign manager, Bill. Okay, on December 13th, New Jersey Governor Chris Christie told the press that no one on his senior staff had prior knowledge of the plan to close access lanes to the George Washington Bridge in September. But a lawyer representing Christie's former campaign manager, Bill Stepien, now says that was wrong. The claim was included in a letter sent in early April and made public Wednesday by attorney Kevin Marino. The letter was sent to Randy Mastro, the high-priced defense attorney who led the governor's internal review of the scandal. The issue is, if Christie lied about knowing about Bridgegate, is he lying about his role in it? While there are multiple people contradicting Governor Christie's statements on what he knew and when he knew it, we still do not know who in his office authorized the lane closures. If Bridget Kelly did not have the authority, then who did, and did Governor Christie know? Key point. I guess we're just going to have to wait for more of this to come out, but it is finally coming out. Trip by trip. And that is the top 10 news story, and those are the top 10 news stories at 10. If you have a story you'd like me to feature on the top 10 at 10, please tweet me at DanSWright, and be sure to read all the stories at FireWave.com. Thanks for watching. See you later.